introduction to meditation. The short answer is that chant is the beginning of meditation. It's not meditation itself. But we'll go into that. Here you see a depiction of an ancient Egyptian man. This is a common man, what's called a reki, a common person, not a noble person or not one of the royalty. And there are two forms of worship in ancient Canada. There is a public worship, which was assisted by the priests and priestesses at a temple. And that was done either in the outer portion of the temple or in the inner court. The inner court would probably be reserved for more like festivals and official functions. But ordinary people were not allowed to go into the middle court of the temple or beyond. And that was the public worship that was led by priests and priestesses. There would be processions sometimes, or carrying the divine icon from one temple to another, processions on the Nile or through roads. And then there is the private practice. And this is like what you do at home. You set up an altar in your home, in a particular room, or in a closet, or however you can do it. And then you do your offerings there, your prayers, and your studies as well. So this is how it was in ancient times. And this is what, in a sense, what is done today also. This is more of a public program, and when you go home, you do some studies, you do reading, or you do practices on your own. You do the private worship. We'll go into this in detail tomorrow then, I guess. This is the Glorious Light meditation system, it's misspelled there slightly, of ancient Egypt. This is the tomb of Seti Ua. He's a sage king of the New Kingdom period. He had inscribed in his tomb, here he is here talking with Asar, his name Asar. He had inscribed in his tomb the first known formal meditation system in history that I'm aware of. And this practice of meditation comes before meditation was practiced in India or any other place in the world. And this is what it would look like. This is the main part of the scripture itself, which gives direct instructions for practice. It's quite a large scripture, but it's the main part. It gives you instructions for a posture. It tells you to visualize a circle with a dot in the middle, which is the symbol of Ra. And then to visualize yourself sitting inside that circle, or being established and being quiet and not moving while you're in that circle. And it gives you insights into the visualization that you should have while you're practicing the meditation, and then the chant that should be used. So it's quite extensively documented. And we have a book that specifically goes into this system of meditation called the Glorious Light System. We discussed this a little bit earlier. This is one of the Persian Haru texts. This is the judgment scene, and this is Asar Sokar. And you notice the avian form here coming in again, the hawk form. This is Asar, our same Asar. When he dies and is resurrected, he goes to become the king of the netherworld. And this is his form as king of the netherworld. Asar Sokar.
So in that capacity, Haru has the same form, and he doesn't have the
Right, Haru has the same hawk form, and Ra has also the same hawk form, and they form a hawk trinity. And sometimes it will be depicted like this: Asar Sokar, or Ra Herakuti also is depicted in this form as well. What it's giving you to understand is that it's really the same divinity in different aspects that you're dealing with in the particular situation. And this is coming, think of it again, that sun with the rays coming out and the different forms of divinity and the different manifestations and different situations. This is the god Anpu. He is the son of Asar and Nebuchadnezzar. So this is Jehuti. He is the scribe of the gods and goddesses. He also represents mind. This is the goddess Mesnet. She has her head on a birthing stone. The stone is where women would actually squat and have their babies on. And in ancient times, and even up until this last century, women used to have babies by squatting. And Native Americans do that. And it's a lot easier for them to have because the gravity helps them, as opposed to being on your back and stirrups and all that kind of thing. This goddess is the one who determines where a person will be reincarnated. If your heart is heavier than Ma'at, it means your heart is heavy with worry, anxiety, sinfulness, lust, desire. And that means that you are an unrighteous person and you will suffer for your delusion. And after that suffering, you will reincarnate. You will come back to the world. If your heart is equal with the balance of mana, that means that you are a moderately righteous person, and you will go to serve Asar in his palace in the netherworld. If your heart is lighter than the feather of Ma'at, that means that you have transcended physicality, and you will go to sit on Asar's throne. If I go sit on you, what happens? We're physical beings, so I'll be heavy on you, but it's the astral plane. They'll become one. This essentially is the heart of Ma'at philosophy. You see, Ma'at philosophy has certain mystical implications, certain philosophical implications. If those were to be understood properly and deeply and thoroughly, then you have entry into the higher aspects of Ma'at culture. Ma'at is the goddess Ma'at. Ma'at is not just about being righteous for the sake of being righteous. It's about being righteous for the sake of discovering a cosmic harmony, a cosmic balance between you and the universe. And if that was to be done, that would be the goal of spirituality. Her main headdress is the feather, the ostrich feather, which she holds on her head with a bandana. She usually wears like this, like a close-fitting outfit. These are the three books. The Wisdomati is the main one that deals with Ma'at philosophy, but also the 42 Precepts, which is like a workbook actually. And then a series of talks based on the 42 laws of Ma'at and their origins in the wisdom text. And that audio series is like about 50 tapes, 55 tapes, and it goes with the manual. And then Healing the Criminal Heart was based on letters written to inmates in reply to their questions about how they need to turn their life around through virtue as a first step. Now, the discipline of the postures, Simatawi postures, I discussed a little bit about that earlier. It is a physical workout, but also it is a mythological workout. In doing this practice, you learn to act and feel like the divinities, and then you also end up starting to understand how they are, how they think. And this is one of the most important things that you also should learn from your spiritual preceptor, is how to reason. See, having, I liken this to any discipline that you can study. Like studying, if you go to a trade school, you study auto mechanics. You can get the theory of how an engine works or how a car engine works. But if it stops working, troubleshooting it is not the same as knowing how it works. Troubleshooting is a different art altogether. Troubleshooting, you need to know how it works, but also how things operate inside, how they wear, how they break down, and how what the symptoms are. All those kind of things are part of troubleshooting. And the preceptor is like a troubleshooter also. That the questions that were asked earlier about how the world works and insight into why can this work. You know, all of you know a lot about how the world works, right? You eat, you breathe, you have to drive a car to go here and there. You know a lot about how it works, but do you have really insight into what is really going on in the world? That's where this philosophy comes in. And not just knowing the philosophy or being able to quote it, but understanding how it works and how to apply it. This is the key. And this means learning how to think, how to reason about things, how to feel about things. And that is what you should be learning as aspirants from your preceptor. If you get if you ask a question and you are told an answer, you should not carry on as if by your own will. Meaning that you should not be trying to, once you have accepted a spiritual preceptor as your leader, as your teacher, you should not also carry into that relationship your egoism, your self-willed nature. You should accept that advice and you should try to follow the best you can. And many aspirants, or many people who come to spiritual lectures or talks, they're not really committed to it. They come to maybe check you out, or see if they like what you say, or then later on see if they can pick it apart, or debate it, or all these other kinds of things. And that's not true spiritual aspiration. And therefore, those people are going to continue thinking the way that they want to think, and disagree with you if they want to disagree with you, and that's fine. The only thing is that they should stay outside of the temple and allow those who are serious about their spiritual evolution to come in and to be free of that kind of bandying about back and forth. So that is an important lesson to learn, how to think. That is the key reason for failure as a spiritual aspirant, not understanding how to make sense of the world, not understanding how to apply the philosophy, and not also surrendering to the teaching. People have their own internal lives that they want to carry on. Sometimes people want to follow their own pleasure-seeking ideas. They also want to be considered spiritual, and those two are not going to work ultimately. So, the discipline of the postures can also be practiced as a meditative session as well. And many aspirants have become certified in the system, in the practice of it. And it is quite advanced. It is based on the teaching of the ancient Egyptian theater, of the reenactment of the mythic drama. And going back to the concept of Shemsu Neter. The system of the postures is broken down into 5 phases. Consider it like a journey when you're doing it. First we come in with Khepri and the creation. And then we go to the earth phase and the different postures of the earth phase. Then transition postures, the animal elements, forces, coming into the higher self poses, and finally establishing ourselves in the higher self, the higher teaching. What the postures? Well, the book goes into it, although it's not as detailed. the real detailed study would be in the study of the myths themselves and in the different series that have been given. Like a good series to give you insight into the mystical implications of the postures and the divinities who have the postures is the Tree of Life series. And I'm sure you know that one. There's a Tree of Life lecture series about 3 years ago where we went into a lot of details into the gods and goddesses. The book Gods and Goddesses now has more, actually. So you should go to that one as a next also. But that lecture also really is very good. We're trying to get it transcribed, but that has not happened yet to be published. But the Gods and Goddesses book, that would be the one also for now. Also to give you an understanding now finally, and I've been trying to hammer this away at you, that it has to be an integral practice in your spiritual life. If you only concentrate on doing devotional exercises, if you only concentrate on meditation, only concentrate on wisdom teachings, or just coming here and listening to teachings, that's not enough. You have to apply yourself. It has to be an integral practice so that each aspect of your personality is harmonized and developed. And so you don't have a lopsided kind of personality. What the trouble, much of the problem in the Western practice of yoga is that there has been a repudiation of these. A repudiation of these. And a concentration on this one. Most of you find practicing physical postures for health and not for spiritual evolution. And why is that? Because most Westerners are incapable, they are unwilling to explore systems of spirituality outside of Western culture. So that is the glorious legacy of ancient Kemet in a nutshell. As you know, we can go for hours and hours and weeks to explaining and describing things. But that would be actually wrong to do that, because you need time to process. And we're concentrating, since I'm here, but really it needs to have a spread out process so you can reflect upon the teaching and then come back to it, week after week after week, day after day, that kind of thing. And so that's why I said earlier that I wouldn't go into spending so much time as we did earlier, although I did, because we're here, and because also I didn't want to leave certain things not answered. So, you have any questions about this so far?
The question when I'm explaining the passage of yoga, the hardest one I have explained is the yoga of wisdom. I don't really know how to. Is that intellect? Is that teaching? Or is that explaining? Because devotional love is the scene, divine everything. The right actions helping people in their meditation. But wisdom, yoga, if you could elaborate on that a little.
The definition of wisdom is knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Information does not equal wisdom. Intellectual brightness does not equal spiritual enlightenment. Intellectual brightness allows you to understand a spiritual teaching. True wisdom occurs when you have intuitional understanding of a subject. Intuition means that you are not using your intellect to understand. You're not, how when you intellectualize about something, you may think, oh, this relates to this, and that relates to that, and the other thing relates to the other one. Oh, I remember this before. Intuition is aha. You don't need any words, you don't need you just direct understanding of a subject. And wisdom philosophy, wisdom teaching allows you to develop and purify your intellect so you can reach that intuitional level of understanding of a subject. And that occurs through the 3-step process: listening, reflection, and meditation. So you listen to a teaching, then you reflect upon it, discuss it, and then you meditate so you become one with it.